Good morning, afternoon, and evening to you wherever you are in the world, and welcome to The Explainer. Today is August 8th, 2025. Every single day the world just bombards you with headlines, right? There's a conflict over here, a disaster over there, some big political move somewhere else. It can feel like you're trying to drink from a fire hose of pure chaos. But what if it's not chaos? What if it's all connected? Well, that's our job today. We're going to take this jumble of news that happened today and find the hidden threads, the patterns lurking underneath. We're not just here to tell you what happened. We're here to piece it all together and show you the real story taking shape. So let's get into it.
So here's how we're going to break it all down today. We've sorted everything into three big themes. First, we'll hit the flashpoints and fault lines, the immediate stuff. Then we'll zoom out to crises on a planetary scale. After that, we'll look at how everyone's trying to deal with all this in building tomorrow's rules. And finally, we'll wrap it all up with your global takeaway.
All right, let's kick off with part one, flashpoints and fault lines. This is where we look at today's most urgent stories, the conflicts, the high-stakes diplomacy, and all that geopolitical tension.
I want to start with a single brutal number: 2. According to aid agencies on the ground, that's how many children died of starvation in Gaza today. Not from a bomb, not in crossfire, but from a complete lack of food. Now, this isn't just a sad statistic. It's a flashing red light on the dashboard of civilization. When children starve to death, it tells you that every single link in the chain that keeps a society running has snapped. Aid convoys can't get through. Food distribution is gone. The basic rule of law you need to stop looting has evaporated. The system is completely and utterly frayed. This number, it's the most terrible symptom of a much bigger disease. It forces us to look right past the political games and see the raw human cost when a society collapses. It's the sharp, painful tip of a colossal iceberg, and it leads us directly to our next point.
That starvation, it's a symptom of what the United Nations is now calling a near-total collapse. And they're talking specifically about the hospital system. So what does that actually mean? What does that look like? It means surgeons are trying to perform incredibly delicate operations lit only by the screen of a cell phone because the power grid is a memory. It means wards are overflowing not just with the wounded, but with people suffering from diseases you read about in history books, like cholera, because there's no clean water. It is a complete system failure. The source material paints a picture of a vicious cycle. The violence and breakdown lead to disease, and the rampant disease makes any kind of recovery totally impossible. You're literally watching a society get unmade in real time.
Now, let's pivot from that crisis on the ground to a pretty big earthquake in the world of diplomacy. We've seen a major shift in language from former President Trump about Russia. For the longest time, the line was firm: no talking to Putin unless President Zelensky is in the room. The whole idea was that Ukraine's future should be decided by Ukraine. Well, that's changed. The new position is a willingness to meet with Putin one-on-one, which, effectively cuts Kiev out of the conversation entirely. So what's the play here? The analysis points to a couple of possibilities. One is the whole great man theory of history, the idea that two powerful guys can just sit down, hash it out, and solve a war, bypassing all the messy details, and the country at the center of it all. The other theory? It's a tactical move, just trying to break the diplomatic freeze and force a new conversation. But whatever the reason, the signal this sends is enormous. If you're an ally in Eastern Europe, this is a terrifying hint of abandonment. If you're Ukraine, it's a direct threat to your very existence. And if you're in Moscow, well, it's a huge diplomatic win before you've even sat down at the table.
And this theme of conflict is playing out in really different ways all over the globe. Let's take the Democratic Republic of Congo. The UN is reporting a horrifying number. M23 rebels killed 319 civilians. But the really crucial insight here isn't just the number, it's the method. They are deliberately targeting farmers during planting season. This is not random violence. It's a calculated, almost sophisticated form of economic warfare. It's weaponized starvation, designed to literally destroy a community from the roots up by taking away its ability to feed itself. Now contrast that with the news out of Myanmar. The figurehead president, a guy installed by the military junta after the coup, has died. And while that makes headlines, on the ground, it changes nothing. It's like shuffling a single deck chair on the Titanic. The real power, the military, is completely untouched. So here you see two very different faces of modern conflict: the hot, brutal economic terrorism in the DRC and the cold, stagnant institutional violence in Myanmar. Both are just absolutely devastating.
So here's a question. After years of what were supposed to be crippling global sanctions, how is Russia's war machine still churning out advanced weapons? The answer, it turns out, is found in the wreckage of its own missiles. Investigators in Ukraine are picking through the debris and finding it's full of Western-made parts. We're talking sophisticated microchips from Europe, high-precision ball bearings from America, all the high-tech guts of modern weapons. These parts are still getting through. But how? Well, our sources describes it as a kind of global shell game. A company in Germany sells some chips to a totally legitimate-looking distributor in Turkey. That distributor then sells them to a brand new shell company in Kazakhstan, which then sends them on a truck across the long, very porous border into Russia. It is a shadowy, complex network built for one purpose: to get around sanctions. And it just goes to show that, in our incredibly interconnected world, economic warfare is like trying to build a dam out of a fishing net. There are just too many holes.
And here we see two really fascinating case studies in how countries try to handle intense international pressure. First up, Lebanon. The government just approved a plan that says the National Army is the only group in the country allowed to have weapons. Now, on paper, that sounds like a huge deal, a direct move to disarm powerful militias like Hezbollah. But in reality, it's pure theater. The source notes that Hezbollah's own ministers literally just walked out of the meeting. They have more guns and more political power than the actual army. So this isn't a real policy change. It's what you might call performance diplomacy. It's a big symbolic gesture for the rest of the world to say, hey, look, we're trying, even when everyone at home knows it's impossible. Now flip that coin over and look at Kenya. The US is threatening to strip its major non-NATO ally status because it's getting too cozy with China and Russia. This is the opposite of symbolic. That status is a real, tangible thing. It means access to US military gear, training, funding. Losing it would hurt. So you've got Lebanon making a grand, empty statement to manage its image, and the US using a very real, very sharp stick to manage its alliances.
But hey, it's not all doom and gloom and impossible situations. Sometimes diplomacy actually pulls a rabbit out of a hat. After some pretty nasty border clashes, Cambodia and Thailand have just agreed to a ceasefire. But here's the cool part. It's being monitored by observers from ASEAN, the regional group of Southeast Asian nations. Now, our source points out that this could be a fascinating new model for how you de-escalate a conflict. It's a two-step process. Step 1. A trusted local player, a regional body like ASEAN, provides the neutral framework. They bring the people and the expertise to handle the mechanics of keeping the peace. But step 2, the motivation to actually sign the deal, that came from an outside power. So you have this potential new formula. A regional group provides the tools for peace, while a great power provides the leverage to use them. It's a really interesting template that you could maybe see being used in other places.
Okay, part 2, crises on a planetary scale. Now we're going to zoom the camera out from those immediate conflicts and look at the slower but just as serious issues of environment and health that are affecting all of us.
We're going to start this section with something that is deeply personal. What's on our plates? A new CDC report just put some hard numbers on the American diet, and wow, just look at this. 62%. Almost 2/3 of all the calories that American children eat now come from ultra-processed foods. For adults, it's more than half. I mean, we all kind of knew fast food was a big deal, but to see it quantified like this by the government, it's a real game changer. It takes a vague cultural worry and turns it into a hard, undeniable national crisis. This isn't just about personal choice anymore. It's a massive economic issue driving billions in healthcare costs. It's even a national security issue because rising obesity is having a direct impact on military recruitment. This chart isn't just data, it is a formal indictment of our entire modern food system. It's going to be Exhibit A in policy debates for a long, long time.
Okay, this next slide basically breaks down the anatomy of what disasters look like now, all over the world. It's become a predictable 3-act tragedy. Act 1, you get an extreme weather event that shatters all the old records. Act 2, that event smashes into our infrastructure, our dams, our forests, our power grids, all of which were built for a 20th century climate that just doesn't exist anymore. And then, Act 3, you get a catastrophic society-wide breakdown. We are seeing this exact script play out right now, just with different actors. In Nigeria,
record rains or overwhelming river systems that were never designed to handle that much water, putting 21 states on flood alert. At the same time, in southern France, a crazy drought and heat wave turned the forests into a giant tinderbox, leading to a mega fire that their modern firefighting forces just couldn't handle. The key connection here is that it doesn't matter if the weapon is fire or water, the victim is always the same: outdated infrastructure. We are living in a 21st century climate with 20th century systems, and those systems are breaking.
From climate disasters to public health ones, this number, over 7,000, is the official count of chikungunya infections in just one Chinese province since July. It's a nasty mosquito-borne virus. But the real story here, the one you need to pay attention to, isn't the virus itself. It's the government's response. Authorities are immediately deploying the full COVID-19 playbook: mandatory hospitalization, local lockdowns, intense digital tracking of citizens. And the crucial insight here is that the pandemic didn't just end. It left behind a powerful new set of tools for state control. For an authoritarian government, this playbook is incredibly useful. It normalizes a level of social monitoring and control that would have been unthinkable before 2020, all wrapped in the very justifiable language of public health. This brings up a massive question for the future. When the next pandemic hits, or even a regional outbreak like this one, are governments around the world going to reach for the same toolkit? Did COVID permanently change the relationship between the state and the individual in a crisis?
And of course, these big planetary crises, they don't hit everyone equally. They always find the most vulnerable people. Just look at these two stories. In Ethiopia, the crisis is entirely man-made. The world's attention, and more importantly its money, has moved on to other things. So international aid to refugee camps has been slashed. The result? Completely predictable. Doctors Without Borders is reporting skyrocketing rates of child malnutrition for nearly 400,000 people who have literally nowhere else to go. It's a quiet, slow-motion catastrophe driven by our short attention spans. Now look at Nepal. The crisis there started with nature, a massive flood. It killed 9 people, which is tragic, but its bigger, longer-lasting impact was that it wiped out the single main bridge on the trade route to China. The source calls this an economic amputation. For a landlocked country like Nepal, that is devastating. Over $700 million in trade just gone. If you're a farmer who uses that route, your entire livelihood vanished in an instant. So one crisis is born from a line on a budget sheet, the other from a wall of water. But for the people at the sharp end of it, the result is exactly the same: devastation.
Okay, on to part 3, building tomorrow's rules. So we've talked a lot about the problems. Now let's switch gears and look at the solutions. The stories about policy, innovation, and how people are trying to respond to all this.
Okay, get ready for a statistic that is probably going to make you do a double take. 9%. That is the projected economic growth for Venezuela next year. That would put it at the very top of all of Latin America. And yes, I mean that Venezuela, the country that's been the global poster child for economic collapse and hyperinflation. So what in the world is going on? Well, the source points to 2 things. First, their oil production is slowly, painfully crawling back. But the really fascinating part is a state-led strategy called import substitution. Basically, because of crushing sanctions, they couldn't import stuff. So the government basically forced the country to start making its own. The wildest result, they now produce 97% of their own food domestically. Now, this is not a free market fairy tale. This is a command and control economy born of pure desperation. But it raises this incredible question: can a country under siege effectively wall itself off from the world and create its own weird kind of stability? It's a huge challenge to the whole idea that sanctions can be used to force political change. It's a remarkable, if very fragile, economic experiment.
The great power competition between the US and China is now being fought at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. The US just announced a huge scientific partnership with the Cook Islands. They're a tiny Pacific nation that just happens to control a gigantic, untouched treasure chest of seabed minerals. And these aren't just any rocks. They are loaded with the cobalt, nickel, and manganese you need for every single EV battery, wind turbine, and smartphone on Earth. For years, China's move in the Pacific has been checkbook diplomacy, building stadiums and ports in exchange for influence. Now, the US is fighting back, not with its own checkbook, but with a totally different offer. They're offering gold standard science and responsible development. The pitch is basically, China will give you a big loan with a lot of strings attached. We will partner with you to scientifically map and sustainably manage your resources for your benefit.
It's a really interesting strategic pivot away from just hard power to soft power. It's an attempt to win the new great game by being the more trustworthy partner.
And not to be outdone, Europe is making its own massive play in this global tech race. The EU is moving forward with this incredibly ambitious idea called the European Research Area. The goal, as the source describes it, is to create a Silicon Valley without borders, a true single market but for knowledge and innovation. Just try to picture this. A cancer researcher in Portugal could seamlessly tap into a patient database in Sweden and use a supercomputer in Germany, all as part of one unified continent-wide system. This is Europe's big answer to China's state-funded research machine and America's venture capital-fueled chaos. Now, the challenges are obviously huge. I mean, trying to get the bureaucracies of 27 different countries to work together is a nightmare. But if they can actually pull this off, it would be a massive long-term strategic bet on collaboration as the key to future global power.
Now for what might be my favorite story of the day. It's a simple number, but it is one of the most powerful and honestly hopeful things we're going to talk about: 0. For one entire year, the city of Helsinki, Finland, had 0 traffic fatalities, 0 people killed by cars, trucks, or buses. Just let that sink in for a second. A major European capital city. For 365 days, nobody died in traffic. It sounds impossible, doesn't it?
So how on earth did Helsinki do the impossible? Well, it's not magic. It's a radical shift in thinking called Vision Zero. And the core idea completely changes the question. It says that traffic deaths are not inevitable accidents. They are preventable failures of system design. The problem isn't the imperfect human driver who makes a mistake. The problem is the street that is designed so poorly that a simple human mistake becomes fatal. So, instead of just putting up more signs telling people to be careful, they redesigned the whole system to be safer by default. They dropped speed limits in the city to just 30 kilometers an hour. That's about 18 miles per hour. They built actual concrete barriers to protect bike lanes, not just a line of paint. They raised crosswalks so they double as speed bumps. They made the entire environment inherently forgiving, so that when a driver inevitably messes up, the result is a dented car, not a dead pedestrian. Helsinki is just incredible proof that problems we assume are permanent are often just a failure of imagination.
All right, part 4, your global takeaway. So we've been all over the world. We've looked at crises and solutions. What's the big picture? How do we pull the signal out of all that noise?
Every day, we are hit with this storm of seemingly disconnected headlines. It's so easy to just see it all as random. A death from starvation, a diplomatic tweet, a report on food, a new tech deal. But the entire point of what we do here, the argument of this whole explainer, is that it is not random. All of these stories are talking to each other.
The stories from August 8th, 2025, they aren't isolated incidents. They are all symptoms of much deeper global forces at play. The starvation in Gaza and the weaponized famine in the DRC, they're both symptoms of how modern conflict increasingly targets the civilian systems that keep people alive. The floods in Nigeria and the processed food crisis in the US, they're symptoms of industrial and climactic systems being pushed past their breaking points. The race for seabed minerals and the plan for a European Silicon Valley, they're symptoms of a new global power map being drawn, not with armies, but with technology and resources. Seeing these connections, understanding how a microchip in a Russian missile is actually part of the same big story as a traffic policy in Helsinki, that is the first step. It's how you cut through the noise and start to form your own clear view of the world.
Our whole mission here is to provide you with clarity, not just a list of facts. If you found this way of looking at the news helpful, the best thing you can do is share this explainer with a friend who might appreciate it too. For more content like this, you can find us on Instagram @TheExplainerShow. And to make sure you never miss our daily deep dive, please follow us on Spotify and YouTube to listen to this explainer every morning at 8 a.m. GMT. Thank you so much for joining us to connect the dots. We'll be back tomorrow with a whole new set of headlines to figure out. Until then, stay curious.